Well, you're on candid camera.
Okay, nice.
And this time
So,
my microphone's gonna work.
yeah. So let's talk web front-end development, I guess. Okay, I was actually thinking about it a lot in the shower yesterday and also during the day today. So, how we gonna do it? Because first of all, there's like a lot to cover. Like if we are talking about whole like front end web development, it's a like super big topic, depending also how deep you want to go to like individual things. So we will probably most probably need like more sessions for sure, like depending on what we're gonna cover, and also depending on the level, because like there is like basic stuff which is kind of easy, but as you go forward and deeper you can get to some serious things. So yeah, we'll see. I try to set the level somewhere between probably, and wait for your questions, because on the one hand I don't want to lose you, on the other hand I promise you like professional, setup and everything. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, so that's just the premise, and now we can, let's say, jump to it. And what I would like to cover is today is like, let's say, some overview, some tools and things like that, and some concepts that are important, and then we can go, let's say, deeper next time. I don't know if I'm gonna do the project setup myself, but I will definitely give you some resources and something you can check yourself, and maybe because it's really time sensitive, you try to set up something doesn't work. So uh maybe in the next session we can try it, but probably today I would like to cover like some overall picture. So let's get started. And like maybe like the first first thing, like in general, should be, let's say, about the web as a whole. Like how do we use websites today? So um okay, so everybody should be familiar with how the website loading and networking works, because that's like the base for everything. So we start there and we will go deeper to the tech. So first of all, how does like the web front end work? So you make the request to some URL address, and first of all you need to be served some HTML file. So first thing you will receive is some, let's say, HTML file, and from that the browser does a lot of other things, like depending what's in that file. And this communication from the, like, on the base of web services is through the HTTP protocol. So you should know like everything about HTTP, and how you make requests, what types of methods are there, what are response codes, what are headers, different headers, and so on. Because it's it will get important, more important later on, and also more and more important how you dig into it. Because then, for example, I will give you an example. When you go and you try to define different methods of content rendering and how you cache that content, you might get to the headers and how they cache the content, and then you can find out that doesn't work for different for like specific types of content rendering. So then you might use something like local cache storage for local rendering and things like that. So it's really important to know your stuff about HTTP protocols and things like that. And then, as it was said already, you need to know about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's nothing new. Basically, you load your HTML structure, which is like structure of your document, and then you style it with CSS, and you make it like interactive with JavaScript. That's like the basic premise. But of course, it gets more complicated as you go, because yeah, you have the structure with HTML, but what about like accessibility and how fast the page is actually loaded and things like that. And with CSS, it gets like to the responsive designs and even loading the like fonts from external resources to the page is complicated on its own. So you can go really like deep there. And then the JavaScript uh, is really interesting part, because yeah, you can do like stuff on the client, some animations and things, but later on through the history, different methods of like content serving were used and discovered, and we have it till today. So you have simple websites where basically you can ask for new HTML with every basically interaction of the user, but then you have like single page applications where basically almost everything is rendered on the client side, and you just exchange the data with the server, and then like everything between. So you have sites that can be partially rendered on the server and then hydrated back again on the client to continue like individual renderings on the site. So that's where the stuff gets kind of tricky. And I get a lot of questions like, why do we do like all of those things? And basically the answer is to optimize for the best use case for the different apps. So uh, you basically want to combine the speed of, let's say, server-side rendering or static site generation for static pages with like the interactivity of, let's say, single page applications when it comes to some user actions and things like that. So you want to have the freedom of choosing your way of rendering different content on the same page and combine it all together. And then also like caching it and working with the data and things like that. So yeah, basically that's the web that's the current state of the front-end web development, like from the higher perspective. And now we can go and look, let's say, look deeper to individual things. So yeah, we start probably with defining the like different disciplines of the front-end web development. So if you didn't know, there are basically like I would say four main disciplines regarding the development. So first of all, it's like you have the structure, accessibility, and yeah, hello Omar, and things like that, like uh, basically your HTML structure and how you do the semantic content on the page, and how you structure it to be accessible even for, I don't know, readers, or you can navigate just with the keyboard on the page and things like that, to be for the content to be like easily understandable with like search robots, like for Google is indexing and things like that, or even things like thumbnail, you when you pass a link for for your page to Twitter or some service, and it will give you that, over that small like widget what's on the page and things like that. So all that like content and semantics of the web page, that's one thing. Second thing is styling, and that means all around the CSS responsiveness and doing the pixel perfect designs, like a pixel perfect size according to designs and so on. Third part is probably the like state management, or I would say like data manipulation, how you make your site interactive with like data and that comes from the server, and how you do like local and remote state management, and basically even the different methods of rendering, I would say, like how you decide what to render where, and how the content will be served, and how the page will be optimized, and things like that. So everything around rendering and state management of the page, that's third big discipline. And the fourth is basically like the general one of programming, so algorithmic problems, optimization of those on the page and things like that. So basically, when you need to manipulate the data, calculate something, and so on, because that happens on the page as well, like depending on the app, but that's also like the discipline, to write the algorithms and understand things there. So that's the fourth category, I would say. And on the web page is usually in JavaScript or TypeScript or something like that. So yeah, things like that. So as you can see, as you go like deeper, these all things are important, and depending also on the size of a team. You have smaller teams that basically everybody needs to handle most of those things, and then you have like bigger team there where basically there's like in big companies, I don't know, Google and Amazon and so on, like where you have like specialists for every of those discipline, like in the team, that focuses only on some part, for example, only for styling or only for like data management and things like that. So it really depends what you do, and you can be even like specialized on specific thing on the front end. So yeah, that's that. And well, when we establish that now, we can go, can start maybe explaining things a little bit deeper. So yeah, so maybe I will send some resources like for the stuff. I don't know, I might have already did that, but yeah. Let's do this. So, well, probably the first step, like understanding of the web, would be this. I can also share it. Some like overview of uh development, so how does the content on the web page is actually served, through the internet, because that's how you get the data for your apps, and how you choose the different renderings, and how you optimize the caching, and a lot of other things, yeah, proxies, caches, and things like that. So that's really important to know how your data or how your things are served on the internet, and how you can later utilize that with concrete technology to be handling this stuff. And like the HTTP is basic, but also you have other protocols. You have like RTC, WebRTC. You have like WebSockets, and you have other things. But let's say this is the basic. And of course, when you are in some browser, you can basically look at the things how they go in your browser. So yeah, so you can do things like that. And first of all, this is, by the way, the content that you received. So this is the structure and everything. You can see the response here, like with the with the pure HTML, and how it's structured, and how are the headers actually, and those tags and optimizations, meta tags here and everything. So this is your first stop, and then from the page, as it's visible here, the other things like different scripts and images are loaded. So uh there's the image, for there's this image loading, and things like that. So uh and as front-end developer, you have influence on how you load those things, and optimize, and so on. And also you track the web page, on some loading times, and things like that. You can do uh, things like, you can set some, how you can see how the page was loaded in some sliding window. Like, everything was loaded quite fast, so it's like here, but yeah, mm, yeah, it was a really small window. And you can see, for example, how your page is behaving when it's loading slowly, and so now I load it slowly, and it was still super fast, because like the page was probably cached somewhere, or something. So fun stuff. You can also see how the page works offline, and yeah, things like that. And you can measure performance and things, and you can measure some type of optimization for how the page is actually responsive, and things like that. And you are responsible as a front-end developer for all of this. So you can do some audits, and there's a like lot of tools in general. Like, this is super fast, because probably all of this is like generated like on the server side, and you just receive basically the pure HTML and CSS with little JavaScript that runs on the background when it's ready. So you don't, but it has nothing to do with the page, so it's like super super fast. So yeah, fun stuff.
Just I think we should make just like a quick comment and let like somebody who is new to this like know what the MDN is to begin with.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I just opened a random page to show you, but yeah, the MDN is really good for web documentation in general. Like, you can find their guides for like basic stuff like HTTP, but also HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all of those things. So basically, if you open the guide, you have like all the things here. Describe getting started with web, and yeah, lot of things. So it's really really good source for your learning about web development. And it's like open source initiative from Mozilla. And yeah, and it's basically written by developers for developers. So good, let's say, good source for web development. That's why I went there, for also the explanation of HTTP.
All right.
But good call. So yeah, so this is like your first stop. Then of course you need to know everything about HTML and CSS. So how those languages works, and also about, let's say, the accessibility and related stuff. And then of course JavaScript, which is like the things that run the interactive side of the web. And that's also like the difference between web app and website, where, for example, like Wikipedia is basically, or these MDN docs are basically just websites, classical websites where you have, content, structure, and just links to different websites. So pretty simple and like the original use case of the web. So quite simple. But then you have like really interactive websites. I don't know, Google Docs, for example, or Gmail or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, YouTube or things like that, where you have like a lot of interactive content. So for example, you load the video on the YouTube and you get some basic page, maybe placeholder, then the video is slowly loaded, and then comments are loaded later, and things like that. So there you can see like a lot of things happening. And also, when you write comments and click likes and all those things like that make the page interactive, uh that's that's the web app part, when you like manage the local state and data and things like that, because here you have basically no like data on anything. You are just served like static content. So yeah, so that's very important distinction. So okay, enough with the overview. Let's dive a bit deeper. So as you probably know or heard, like most of the web development is done in different like frameworks and with different libraries and so on, usually all based around JavaScript, because what you can do, you can, like I said, you can, let's say, generate some static content on the server, and you can do that with other programming languages. I don't know, PHP, C Sharp, Python, uh, whatever. But you can do it also with JavaScript. So you can basically generate some content with, let's say, Node.js, and then you send it to the client through the HTTP and browser, and then you can hook up and you can generate more content and be interactive on the client side, which is like the JavaScript on the client. And when you have both like JavaScript on the server and client, you can take advantage and you can combine like single code base to support both of those things, and so on. And you also need some, that means that you have some logic on the server, but also that means a lot more JavaScript on the client when you do some interactive stuff. And you also need some efficient ways how to render things on the client, like with JavaScript. And so that's basically where the popular things like React and Angular and I don't know, Svelte and Vue and all of these frameworks like come in. And first thing that they solve is like how to render HTML content with JavaScript to make it like more interactive. And then there are frameworks that take it to another level, like SvelteKit, Nuxt, Next, JS, and so on, which combine all of these with the different rendering styles and things like that. So that's where it gets more complicated, basically, for this. So you can, when you need to write simple website, you can just write the HTML file with some CSS and maybe some JavaScript animation, but you can do animations in CSS these days as well. So you write some of those like single files, and you upload it to some server, and when somebody requests them to their browser, they get rendered. And that's also maybe one important note for the front end, that like you basically in the front end you basically work mainly in the context of the browser. So like the browser is your playground, browser is, let's say, your OS operation system like layer, because you do everything through the browser on the front end. So the browser takes care of your website. You tell it how you want to load it, how you want to cache it, how you want to run your JavaScript there, and it does all of that, and it offers you all the JavaScript APIs. For example, if you want to, communicate with Bluetooth on the website, you do it through browser. Same with the camera, same with the sound, and so on. Good example here, the Google Meets, when where you can do the calls through the web as well. So everything is handled on the browser. So uh, that's why many front-end devs are happy that we now have mainly the Chrome, because, like, yeah, it's not good that there's like less diversity, let's say, and maybe less drive for innovation when you have only one main core. And there's also the Mozilla still, but it's minor in minority now. But yeah, but Chrome doesn't mean that you also have to go with Google. You can use Brave or other things. So it's fine. And as a web developer, because now you developing only for, let's say, like one OS that it's like, supported, you only need to care about some versions of the browser, if you can use some features, and you are good. So that's another important thing, that as a web developer, you really care about, browsers and their features, and so on, when you're developing your site. Okay, back to the um, back to the rendering, and yeah, and things like that. So as I was saying, you can do simple website and just upload it. Then you need site that has multiple, you need website that has multiple sites. So then you need to write the HTML several times, and there will be repeating pieces and so on. So you are interested, there are, each year there are like reviews, like state of JS and things like that, where you have like statistics and everything of what's most used and how people like it and how does it evolve and so on. So uh, from this part, we need to be more specific and, let's say, like technology oriented. And because like React is the most popular these days, I would probably go with that and with its ecosystem, uh, if you don't mind. So uh, yeah, so let's talk React a bit. So basically, React on its own is just a library that allows you that really important thing of the client-side rendering, as I said before, that you can basically generate your HTML with JavaScript in the browser, like dynamically based on the data and other things. And that's the job for the React, where you basically can write pieces of your HTML, combine it directly with JavaScript, and then do the rendering. So that's the thing. But then you have, let's say, you can go beyond and combine it to allow you that server-side rendering and static size generation and so on, and you can still use React, but you probably don't want to do that on your own. And also another thing, like those single page apps probably need some routing, and you have client routing, and then when you do the server-side rendering, you also need like server routing and lot of other things. And also you need some libraries for that state management, because React basically doesn't provide it, like for the let's say, global client-side application state, or remote state, how it is sometimes called. So you need some libraries to do that, like, I don't know, React query, Redux, something, uh, or Remix, or things like that. You have like lot of options. And uh, for the state management. And so, yeah. And then other smaller things, like, for example, if you are in React, you can choose, you can write still your CSS as you are used to, but you can also render your CSS with React, or like with style, with something called style component. So you can do your CSS in JavaScript as well when you are at it, and yeah. And other smaller things, like, for example, you can use the built-in fetch method, but you can use other things to fetch your data, like Axios or something. So you choose your, let's say, main rendering framework. Then you need to, you probably want to support like the server-side rendering and all of those things, and you need to pack it up with a lot of other libraries to allow you to uh, work with that. For example, we are talking, let's say, simple data fetching from like REST APIs, but you can have GraphQL APIs, you can have like gRPC, you can have SOAP, you can have different types of APIs where you get your data, and uh, and things like that. So uh, yeah, it it's a lot. And so for that, for you have the React, but then you have like, frameworks built on top of the React library. Most popular these days is, let's say, Next.js, where that Next.js like uses React for rendering, but solves the problems of server-side rendering and routing and things like that, like by design. So you can do those things when you use like Next.js, and has, for example, full-blown like TypeScript support. So you can write your code type, which is also a good thing. And also supports a lot of other things, like out of the box. So you have like linters and prettiers and other things like set up out of the box. And yeah, so basically, most of the devs now, like, even for small projects, they start like with Next, so they are prepared for different types of renderings and things like that, and they can expand from that. And so, but you don't have to. You can use different frameworks, but you probably want to use some frameworks that solves the, you know repeating problems of the rendering and routing and things like that for you. And you probably want to get familiar, with one. And let's say Next.js is again the most popular for React, so let's go with that. And then you can use different libraries based on your use case. For example, if you use GraphQL, you probably want to use Apollo client for your state management and querying the data. Yeah. So you need to choose things like that based on your use case and other things. And then you need to set it all up, put it together, and then you can start actually writing your code, which puts you back to the place where you need to know, the HTML, CSS algorithms, JavaScript, and so on. Like, when you start to work on the code base, so all of those things get useful here as well. And yeah, and the last thing probably from the overview is like, okay, so now I have the app and I want to host it somewhere, and run it. And when you have this type of setup where you have like the framework that needs server-side rendering with Node.js, so you need some servers that run Node.js, and you also need, the site generation things, and then you need to serve those files to the clients, and then do the hydration and do the client-side rendering and all of that. Like, yeah, the frameworks provides that, but you need the environment to run this. And for Next.js, probably the most used, because it belongs to the same company as Vercel. So you can deploy your Next.js up to Vercel, and it's super easy because, again, Vercel already supports that environment out of the box. So it takes care of your renderings and server-side renderings and site generation and things like that. So yeah, so that brings me like basically to the, let's say, current setup that is really popular. A lot of people use that in like many variations, but the core is probably there. And we use it at work as well. So you want to use, React. So okay, you need you need support for a lot of other things. So you probably use Next.js on top of the React because it's currently also the most popular with a lot of features. Then you need to host it. Well, Next.js basically runs smoothly on the Vercel because it belongs to the same company, so you can go with Vercel. You can use other things as well, but there's usually more setup. Vercel is like really out of the box, so now you can host it. Nice. Uh, and then you need to write the code, and for that you probably want to use TypeScript. Cool. You need to select all of your libraries, like other smaller libraries, depending on your APIs and on your use case and so on. How you want to write your CSS, and so on. We usually use like style components and things like that. And then also you need to set up like for your code as well. Like you need the linters to keep the code base, steady. Like, and same for everybody. Yeah, so linters, prettiers. You should probably write some tests. You want to keep the design consistent. So when you have like bigger page or bigger app with lot of pages, you probably, and with repeating components, you probably want to use things like Storybook and so on. For the testing, you want to use probably end-to-end tests as well as some unit tests and so on. So you will probably use something like Cypress. Uh, and yeah, and lists continue like depending on specific use case. So there's like a lot, and that, and also everything should be versioned in the Git, and that's like minimum. So all of this just to set up the projects, like all of those libraries and tech like put together and set up properly just to start your project, and and then you can start actually building the app. Yeah. Fun stuff. So do you have any questions for this? Does it make sense?
Not at the moment. I don't have any questions. I'm sorry. I have to hit like 3 buttons to be able to actually talk. So sorry.
Yeah, it's
Because I'm recording. So sorry about that.
Okay. So I have actually a little surprise for you, and it was
Ooh,
by chance, I would
surprise.
say, because like Mimi asked, okay, let's do the front end and things. And as you probably know, I work for this STRV company. So we actually just finished the front end academy, like 3 months course on like the whole front end and how we do things here, where basically the base is already like HTML, CSS, React, Git, and all of those things, and we start from there for the 3 months course. So, and it's still for beginners. Like it's still considered like beginner course. And the surprise or like good thing is that actually all of those materials from the course are publicly available on our GitHub. So yeah, I can send you the uh, code. And the thing is that in this course, the actually whole course is like about setting up the projects, like, and it's all there also in the Git, and versions like according to lessons, and how you go through the project, how you write different things, how you set up the projects, and all of those things. So it's all there. And I thought, well, this kind of makes sense to go for it, maybe, because I'm not much of a presentation guy, because I know that all the resources are there, and this just confirms it because the resource is already there. But I'm not stealing like the authorship or anything from anybody, because those are all of my colleagues, and also they're all like written there, and all of those commits are signed and so on. So it's fine. So yeah, so this is the curse. And just like we can today, let's say, finish the thing go with going over some basic basic concept. So I know that like in the getting started, like, yeah, you need uh you need you need Git, you need JavaScript, and other concepts, like when you learning JavaScript, you need HTML, CSS, and other things. You also need to know something about React and so on. And then for the text setup, you basically just need Node, because as React runs in the JavaScript ecosystem, it pulls from it like its libraries, like packages and everything. So it runs on Node. So you need local install Node, and you can install it with version manager, so you can switch versions of Node. I think the current Alta's version of Node is 16, but the minimal recommended is 14. Probably, because React cannot run with lower versions like the setup. So that's the thing. And it actually starts like with introducing the app and things like that, and also with some like philosophy of the front end, of our front end team, because this is actually kind of important, like, because all of this tech and all of those concepts and all of those things I mentioned, you do not drown in that. You need some kind of like concepts, or let's say uh, principles that you should follow to uh, you know help you to deliver some software. And we could talk about it, like, yeah, you need to be open-minded, contest thinking, patient. You need to educate constantly, and yeah, and share back. And yeah, the output should be focused on performance, security, stability, accessibility, and so on. So this is just some introduction to our front end team and the app that is built in this course, like from the scratch. So first lesson was actually a React crash course. So yeah, we start on the React basis, and I think the explanations here are pretty nice, because they start, okay, so you have like HTML, and you want to make it interactive, so you can do this. But then you can convert it to React like this, and so on. So pretty nice. It is following some like tutorials. It's usually good practice when you know JavaScript, to show things how they are done, in JavaScript, and then slowly turn them to the React, so you can get grasp of the concept. And then there is the project setup. So like I was actually explaining you like all of this, let's say, mush around, because when you start like the project setup itself, you basically already start from like the Next.js app, from installing the libraries, and so on. And it's a lot, and you basically need to know why you need that, how does it work, how is it useful, and so on. And it comes all from those things I talk about, like from the general theory, because we start with the next framework because it already provides a lot of support for the rendering, different content serving, routing, and all of those things. So we start with that, and then as you develop in the team and things like that. By the way, notice, you create the app and then commit immediately, because good practice, after each step, make a commit, and so on. Again, need to know about Git and what are good practices in Git. Then second step, you need like to sync your team in the project. So you use like ESLint, use Prettiers. You actually enforce those rules by enabling like uh linting for staging in your commit, and linting before the commit, and or before the push, and things like that. And then you start to care about project architecture, and basically mean like installing a lot of other things. Then you start your project in TypeScript, so you need to learn about TypeScript, and how does that work, and how does that relate uh, to JavaScript. Then yeah, some more advanced thing about HTML, and some elements and some common mistakes and so on. For example, never use header based on the font size. That's something that I see a lot of this mistake. Like a lot of people make this mistake. Like it's not about the font size; it's about semantic context. Yeah, and then the styling, and you go, okay, I can run CSS, but I can use, styled components. And I basically take the practices from, let's say, CSS, that I defined, like CSS variables and some global context and so on, like in the CSS. So I probably want to do the same with the style components, and then use those values as variables, and so on. Yeah, and then go forward and forward, and yeah, the networking and state management, that plays an important part. And yeah, and the list goes forward. So this basically teaches you all that you need from the setup. Maybe one thing, like the Next.js itself. I am going to send the link. Uh, yeah, and I just noticed the question. What kind of projects? Well, I think the project that is in the course is some like event management thing, which is kind of nice. But you can start, like from the basic, like the React. Actually, the React tutorial itself has like uh you are basically building some app in the tutorial. And yeah. So you can start following uh like the React tutorial. That's basically a good place to start. And then you can try to build, typical to-do list to grab the concept, and then maybe think of something of your own, some smaller app, uh, or bigger app, depending like what you want to learn. There's like a lot of pages that gives you ideas for projects to build, and so on. Yeah. Okay, back to the next. So I was talking about this a lot. Uh, yeah. basically, like I said, it's based on React, but gives you like the features you want, like uh, hybrid static server-side rendering, TypeScript. It takes care of other things like bundling for like quicker loading, and also like suspense loading of resources and things like that. Prefetching, actually. These days you are doing things like that. You have like menu, and you prefetch the page's content, but just by user like hovering over the menu list, like, this menu item should take you on like contact page, and when user like goes, just hovers over that button, you on the background already prefetching the content for the contact page, just to be sure that you are able to load it quickly. And things like that. So yeah, and Next.js supports that stuff, and also a lot of other things like image optimization and internationalization, like enabling different analytics, like different type of server side generation, server side rendering. New thing that is also really popular, starting to be popular, is like incremental static generation of the pages, TypeScript support. Yeah, big, like fast refresh time because of some caching and things like that, and the routing, and actually like building your own middlewares for the backend, so you can do your, let's say, fetching of the data from the servers like on the one place, or do the transformation of data on the one place, and then use that middleware both on server side and client side rendering. And yeah, and Next is used by like by everybody important basically these days, and its popularity actually grows together with the React popularity. And yeah, so like setting this up is nothing super complicated, because it has like built-in, let's say, CI for creating the app. So you can create the app, you can create it with TypeScript support, and then you can start doing all of those, the configuration step I was showing you, like setting up linters and things like that. So yeah, fun stuff. But yeah, so but it has like things built in, so you just need to configure a couple of things, and uh, and you good image and font optimization. That's also a good thing. And the routing and testing, and testing with Cypress and so on. It's like all built in or supported, to integrate it with all of those other tools. So yeah, kind of good. And then when you want to, yeah, there's like some showcase. And then when you want to, deploy it, you can go to Vercel, which is as you can see, this the copyright here for the Vercel. Uh, and yeah, and the Vercel is basically like let's say something like Netlify, Cloudflare, or something like other services for deployment, where you can deploy your deploy your app really fast, and uh, have it served like globally with super guaranteed like uptime and things like that. So, and because it's the same company that does Vercel, it's super performant. And so, for example, you can deploy your server-side rendering to the edge functions, and you can basically, when the client calls your address and some content needs to be re-rendered, pre-rendered like on the server, it automatically directs to the nearest data center where it spins up like the like cloud function just to do your server-side rendering and return the content. And you don't need basically servers. You can do the server-side rendering like serverless, and you can do it on the edge. That means like uh different users goes to the like nearest data centers for even faster like load times and things like that. Fun stuff. uh cool. Yeah, so this is how, let's say, things are done these days, and what we do at work. And so yeah, we have like a couple more minutes, but this is basically like the let's say intro to this. I gave you some resources, and I can definitely give you more on like specific topics. uh but that's it. And like on the Saturday, we can, or some other time we can kick off from this, and like we can go through that project setup, uh, and talk about fake things in more detail. But like I said, this is just a really high overview, and I mentioned probably a lot of terms and tech that uh, might know or not know. And like you can have like our lesson for basically each of those terms, and how does that work, and so on. So uh yeah, and then we can go also for the backend development and other stuff. So if you want to go like complete full stack. But again,
Yeah.
like I said, like for the web development, some of those lines like are kind of blurry sometimes with when you handle like the rendering on the servers from the like front end perspective. So it really depends.
Hmm. Very good.
Yeah.
This is some of the things that I'm kind of facing on the front end. The back end I kind of have pretty much all situated. I'm learning Django right now, so um, I'm still learning Django. We'll see if I learn it within the next 6 months.
Yeah, like basically it boils down back to the history. I was talking about it like previously, I think, that like the history was, you rendered all the content on the server and just serve those HTML and CSS files. Then it slowly like developed that you mobile apps actually did like a lot, that you need to basically just serve the data. So like the APIs became really popular, and then you have like the apps consuming the API, so you can do the same for the front end. You have just basically the single page apps consuming the APIs, but then the need like to have some sites like rendered and delivered fast because they are static content came back. So now you have this hybrid mode that you can render some stuff on the server, and other things that are rendered on the client. But basically both of those things can fetch the data from the APIs. So the backend development these days is mostly focused on providing those APIs and the data, less than, and the logic and things like that, less than like the rendering of the things, because usually the front end can decide and take care of the rendering these days. So you basically focus on the APIs mostly.
Hmm. Oh, very good. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually kind of an article that I actually just read just yesterday, actually, about how, like, basically everybody just got on this big hard on to start writing APIs for everyone, and that it
Yeah.
kind of screwed up the internet.
kind of
Yeah.
did, because like exactly like the beginning, of the web was just serving those HTML files. And if we did that today, it like would be super fast, like Wikipedia or the MDN like load super fast even on the slow internet, because like those are just static files. But that then the JavaScript and like all the interactive apps and everything, it's kind of funny, and it needs lots of data, and yeah, and everybody then started, and mobile apps that they need a lot of, they are basically based only on data, because all the rendering and things is happening on the device, on the app. So basically everybody like on the backend and on the server switch to the APIs and wrote APIs for everything. And then the funny thing was that like the APIs can integrate themselves. So you have APIs that integrate other APIs, and yeah,
Yeah,
APIs everywhere.
and that was kind of his point. He was like, dude, the internet is an API. Your
Yeah.
browser is an API that you can, use. Most of the reason why they use APIs is just completely ridiculous. They don't even know why they're using an API. And then it basically like, yeah, it was actually really interesting. I'll have to find that article because it made me laugh. Like there was all these, there's all these soy devs that were like, like about ready to lose their shit because of what this guy wrote. But it was like, it was really like, wait, he's absolutely right. Like, and he wasn't saying like you never use an API. He wasn't saying that at all. But that's how everybody took it.
Mhm.
But he was like, dude, like it's just way overkill the amount of APIs that people use.
Mm, yeah.
But it was pretty. I'll send you the article. It was really funny, actually. Kind of just. It was pretty scathing to say the least, but it was pretty reasonable, I thought.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well, I hope it made sense, the things
mhm.
I said today. Uh, kind of like clicked to the bigger scheme of things, because like I said, there's a lot. Uh, so maybe, last minutes, or I don't know if you want to end. We usually end at the half past. Yeah. So, do you have like any more questions, or any questions or something like regarding this front-end development, or I know I promised some project setup, but I think this was kind of necessary to know the
Mhm.
for the setup, because if I was, like I said, if I start with setting up Next.js project, everybody will be like, what, why are you doing that, like
I have a question actually.
yeah, sure.
What do you think about, a lot of people think nowadays WordPress and the CMS
Mm.
are taking over a lot of the front end, or it's making it so that people just work exclusively on those systems. Does that make like the front end technologies not as significant nowadays,
Mm.
or what do you think about that?
Well, like I know that, for example, Mimi here works on WordPress, but I don't think it's like mm, doesn't like cross one or the other, because you can actually write like WordPress templates with React and combine it together. So it really depends.
I see.
Yeah, like the WordPress is like good CMS, but you can extend it with a lot of plugins, and you can use already prepared templates and things like that. But there are people that need to write those plugins and need to construct those templates and so on. So yeah, and so you can definitely use that, but still it's let's say some content moderation. So, but when you are building something, custom, or something for specific for the client, or specific design, uh, you probably want to develop it like with yourself, both on the front end and on the back end.
Okay.
Yeah, like when you want to have some content management, or when you want to have some e-shop and you can go with Shopify or something, that's completely fine. But then you have like apps that are really custom or need some custom templates, custom designs you build every day. And yeah, like for example, project I actually uh, talking about today, and allocations. We have a project, that uses some IoT, like, and you need app and you need backend for that, and some web management and some data science stuff and so on. And you need to build that. So, like, you can't use WordPress for that.
That was actually a really good question, I think. Go ahead, Omar. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead. I just said that makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Yeah, I actually do have a question for later though, but it's a DevOps question, so I'll wait.
Yeah, I'm just reading the chat. There was one more question for from Dustin about switching Node.js for Bun. Well, like it's both JavaScript runtime, so the code should run just fine. The thing is that it uses sometimes some different, let's say, package resolution and things like that. So there might be some incompatible, let's say, older packages and things like that. But in general, the switch shouldn't be like super hard. Uh, I have my eye on Bun for a while, but we are not switching to this yet for production projects because it's still like in development, and it's still, everybody will tell you it's still too early, but it's definitely interesting, interesting stuff. And I think it's about time that we have some let's say newer and faster, JavaScript runtime, because yeah, the Node is kind of old, and some of those things in Node are written in an old way, and it's really hard to modernize. Even like the Deno, before the ban, there was a Deno, and basically it's the thing written by the original authors of Node. And I might have told you, and it's also recorded, but there was a big, Node.js conference, 2018, I don't know, something like that. And basically, the main speaker was like author of Node.js, like on the Node.js conference. And basically, he came onto the stage, point out all the mistakes that he made in Node.js, apologized, and introduced Deno as a successor of Node.js. Fun stuff, because like there are those mistakes, in Node.js, and yeah, and it's kind of old. And yeah, so we already had like Deno for some time. It's also kind of like interesting, and but it was the problem with Deno, and why it's not so widespread, is it's not like compatible at all. It's basically the whole new thing, really, radical, innovative approach. So it's kind of hard to migrate. The ban is a bit different. They rewrote a lot of things. They are kind of compatible with the Node. So it's really like more interesting, and we'll see how it goes. But it's like I said, it's still not like production ready. It's still in development, and
Okay.
yeah, and well, SvelteKit is front-end framework, first of all, and Express is backend framework. Astro is front-end framework that runs on the backend. And SvelteKit as well, because it supports server-side rendering, but it's mainly front-end framework. And yeah, so Marin and like Marin mean stack is React and Angular, I think, or something like that. So that's different front-end framework as well. So kind of mix up. So basically, the thing between like switching between, let's separate this. So switching between yeah yeah, because they support like server-side rendering, but Astro only supports like server-side rendering and yeah, page generation. But got it. Yeah, I know that in the surveys it's like that, but because of the server-side rendering thing.
So
Yeah.
I got a quick question. So, like, I know that one thing that is kind of popular sometimes, and I think it's for security, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it, is mixing like Django on the back end with like a front end
Yeah.
with JavaScript. And so, what are some of the use cases that would be ideal?
Mhm. Well, you can use it for like almost anything. Again, like that's actually the part I was going to answer for Dustin as well, because okay, you can like separate it for, let's say, front end things, and define the front end things like the things that render the front end content. That means like HTML, CSS, and other stuff. And like, yeah, the SvelteKit can render that on the server, with Svelte, which is like some framework. The React can render that, with Next on the server, and Astro also renders stuff, and Python can also render stuff, so you can Django to render things. So that's the one part. And then you render things on the server, send it to the client, and then what? Then JavaScript, let's say, kicks in. And what kind of JavaScript? Because on the client you can start with the React, and if you render the content on the backend in specific way, you can hydrate. It's like taking over from the server rendering and rendering more things on the client with the same framework, with the Svelte or React. So that's the advantage of the Svelte or SvelteKit or Next. Or Next, or those frameworks that they can do this partial rendering on the server and partial on the front. And then in Django you can render the app on the server in the way that, for example, React on the client can like kick in and render stuff on the client as well, like parts of the application, if you write it correctly. Or you can omit React at all, and you can use jQuery or something like on the front end, or you can do no JavaScript at all and just have like static website. So it really depends. And then you can support the server-side rendering and also the APIs at the same time in the Django, but also again in the Next, you can write those middlewares and in SvelteKit as well. So you can do like partial backend, in those as well, and in Django. So basically, like, you can do almost everything in any of those frameworks with a little bit of initiative. And that's the thing, like, it really depends what you want to develop and how should it behave and what are the features that you want to do there, how much the app should be interactive and which parts should be rendered how and why and so on.
Well, and mainly my question was more like geared to like what would be a kind of a like a desired use case. Like if you could tell me like where does one kind of excel when you actually do that. So if you like where would a situation excel using Django and JavaScript versus just using Node.js or in this case some other backend.
No, nothing in particular.
Nothing.
It's not the developer's choice.
Oh,
Like,
okay. All
what
right.
you want, what you prefer for the backend language, and then you are still stick with the JavaScript. But as we talked about last time, like you can do Python on the front end as well. It's slower, but you can do it. So basically, if you hate JavaScript, you can do like Django backend and Python on the client as well, and you can do everything in Python, and you can achieve probably the same effect. Maybe it won't be so performant, but like you can. So yeah.
Well, I'm not very privy to JavaScript, but I
Maybe like
I actually am doing better though.
yeah. Maybe like one advantage is that when you, for example, build that API in the Django, you have available all of those, let's say, data science and other,
Oh.
libraries and things. So maybe, project that is somewhat data science heavy and also needs the API to provide the data could be really good for the Python, because you can then like utilize the power of Python in different field and connect it to the serving the data and through the API, and then having some app consuming that API, some front end app. So yeah, you could probably do that. That would be some use case.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of trying to deploy some of my projects on my portfolio app, and that might actually be something that I could do. Be easier anyway. Like where I deploy it, like in the terminal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be easier in Python than in like if I have a CLI. I think that would be easier.
Well, basically, if you have script in Python, you can build, like web API around that, and then your front end app through JavaScript can consume that API. And then it depends on how you just render that consumed content. So if you use React, if you use Svelte or whatever, on the client. So yeah, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thought that I had.
Yeah, but it's not like, it's not that the tech would excel at it. It's just like convenient because you already had that stuff in the Python, so you can just utilize the Python to push it to some, front end. So like the backend in this sense, like the backend, frameworks, either Node or Python, or like I said, PHP or other, they are just responsible for working with the data, and then you need to push the data to your clients, and you can do it in many ways. For the most common nowadays is API, because it's universal to consume the API from the mobile, from the web, and so on. But you can render PDF and push the PDF somewhere, and then people will download your PDF with the content. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So anyway. Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much all I got for right now. Except might I might send you a message with a question. Anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Oh.
So is it necessary to have the static content like HTML, CSS to be ready before we move on to develop on the framework, like front-end framework?
Understand the question. Well, it actually depends. Like, what is happening mostly these days is that you can run the rough design and design the page and stuff, but usually you don't have just single page or single thing. You have like the whole app designed with several pages and things. So what is happening is that you use things like Storybook, and talked about that before, that you basically just design those components, and test them separately, or display them separately in the storybook, like design components, and they are basically just pure HTML and CSS, just already wrapped into the React, or Svelte or Angular or whatever, just components, prepared to be used, start by the design, but not with any data or server-side running or whatever, just, components according to design. So that's something that you can prepare ahead, like for the design, and then you can build the app with those components in the framework of your choosing. That's probably the way how it is done for, let's say, bigger projects where you want to be prepared for, you want to have like design system in place beforehand. Yeah.
All right.
But for the smaller projects, you can probably like design those components right in the app. If you know the HTML and CSS.
Yeah, because I think about if you develop as a team and you have to share CSS class like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like that's other thing, like how you come to your CSS in some teamwork. Usually, what you do when you set up the project, it's another step. Like you do some CSS reset, and then you set up some global system according to design. So, for example, design should be consistent in color, spacings, and things like that. So you basically define like variables for that, either CSS variables or like in style components. You define basically some global style when you set up the project, and then if you use, for example, the style components or even like pure CSS that is like scope based for the components, then you just work on the components separately, and every member of the team just works on the components and uses those variables from the global style, and they are basically good to go. And yeah, and if you want to develop like a lot of components and design system beforehand, you can prototype it in Storybook, but otherwise you can work on different parts of the app just with the global design defined at the beginning.
I see.
Very good. All right. Any other questions?
Wow.
What's
Yeah, my pleasure.
Oh, hey, Omar made a comment a while back saying PDF is the way to go, but I didn't know why he
Yeah.
said that.
Because I said that you can render your data to the PDF.
Oh shit! Yes. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I didn't. I guess that went over my head for the first time you said it. So yeah, that makes sense. Dustin, Javi, any questions?
Cool.
Mm.
Yeah, and like don't worry, like if you don't get some of those concepts or something, like it's completely fine. I have like more than 10 years of web development behind me, so yeah. I'm kind of dinosaur in those things, but you can slowly and surely learn it all. It's no biggie, and you can start simple, like I said, you can start with HTML and CSS pages, then some JavaScript, then you can learn React just to know the different kind of rendering. You can try to build some single page app, and then slowly you can graduate to Next and play with the different kinds of rendering and things like that, and you discover those concepts as you go. And yeah.
Very good. So I just have one. I'll just give you my DevOps question really quick since we're all here. So I'm just so Mimi kind of talked me into this. Thank you so much, Mimi. She basically said I should try to become a DevOps engineer because of my Linux background and the fact that I'm not afraid of the terminal.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at this page and they were like kind of showing like like a junior DevOps, what it would take, and I'm like, damn, dude, like I'm like 80% there, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty close. I just would need to learn like Kubernetes and Docker, and I think I would, and because I know a little bit about Apache, I would probably brush up on that and brush up on my Bash scripting skills, and my programming skills. I would continue on. What is a badass, in your opinion? What is like a badass like project that I could do to like showcase my DevOps skill?
Take, let's say, any little bit complicated app. I mean, like some server stuff, some client stuff, some database, and maybe multiple databases or something like that, and set up the complete thing, for example, in Kubernetes cluster or in some cloud or something, and know what you are doing and why. That means like, you have some app that serves. It might be something really simple, just some serving customers something. The app might be already like built, that you find probably something, and then you create the containers, for the app, for the database and things like that, and you set up the concept in the Kubernetes. So you will deploy, pod for your app, pod for your database. It works good. Then you can iterate on that. So for example, you set up it's SQL database. So you set up like master, slave, and replication and fallover mechanisms for your database. Like, slave replace master, the master is down and start new slave and so on. So the database is like, fault tolerant and always running. Or if it's Mongo or some NoSQL, you can set up like replication, like some like cluster for Mongo. For the app, you want to probably then do the scaling. Yeah, you want to do like auto scaling setup based on the incoming traffic. So, for example, you want to scale from let's say 3 to 50 pods depending on the traffic, and then you need to load balance between them, like the traffic and everything. Then you want to add, let's say, a second database, for example, Redis for caching, so you can do setup of Redis and connect it with your current app, and and do this like whole setup in Kubernetes, preferably automated, like with some like infrastructure as a code or something, and like that's like state of the art these days, probably.
Very good, very good. Yeah. That's something that I'm going to look into doing, because kind of have to like look at. I've been learning programming for a while, so now I think I need to learn think about getting a job here pretty soon. So
yeah, like basically the role of the DevOps is to support the running of the apps, and it really depends on the company and on the apps you are running. You can work from old school company that has its own servers or maybe just virtual servers, and you will be responsible for installing like Apache and PHP and stuff like that, and deploying the app there, through FTP or something, and that's still DevOps, like, setting up those servers to run smoothly, no security breaches and so on. That's like DevOps as well. And then there are modern companies where you have Kubernetes cluster in AWS, and you have like Terraform configuration that you take care of, and to be able to deploy and scale your app in Docker containers. That's also DevOps. So like it really varies from job to job, and yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah. Oh wow, very good, Mimi. I actually like at first when Mimi suggested it, I actually kind of shot it down, but I looked in. I don't know what I was looking at, and I looked into it a little bit more. I was like, yeah, this is not like this is actually would be pretty kind of a pretty cool little gig. So,
Yeah.
problem solving,
By
making
the way,
things work.
I just did this today, like I told you at the beginning. I just did DevOps on AWS today. I prepared some templates in AWS CDK for the whole company. Yay!
Well, yeah, you're just a stud, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we totally like appreciate like all of the presentations that you do, and we appreciate like the mentoring and everything. This has been like that like on my program that I was working on before, when you showed me how to map those variables, like that was like a really really big thing. Like that was a big eye opener for me about mapping. I still want to look into that like quite a bit more. I think I would learn like I think I would be able to be a way better programmer if I knew how to map things. Yeah. But the thing is what sucks is like there isn't anything that takes you like from point A to point B in mapping. Like they're like, oh, you just map it. It's like, okay, well, thanks, but like there's no point A to point B that I've found so far.
Yeah, it's like basic concept. It's like you need to master it. Same as for loops.
Yeah, exactly. But at least in for loops, they tell you like from point A to point B. Like they give you like a really good idea how to do it.
Yeah, and then I had like junior, let's say, developers, doesn't matter the language, and they could write a for loop like let's say with a C-like syntax. So you have like the I, and I is smaller than something, and I plus plus, that typical for loop.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell them write a for loop that goes through each let's say odd element and iterate from the back of the array. And they were completely lost.
That actually is kind of hard, though. I mean, probably not to you.
It's still for loop.
Yeah, yeah. I think I know how I would do it, but I would have to. I mean, I would
-2 until you are bigger than 0, and that's it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I would. Yeah, I think that's how I would do it too, but it would take me a second. Like I'd probably fumble through that.
And but like that's same with the mapping. Like you just map function over something, and like start with the simple function that just does something simple, and then go from there to more advanced stuff.
Yeah.
I have this problem too. Try to use functional programming, right?
Oh shit! Yeah.
I cannot remember.
Okay. Well, it takes practice.
Mimi, do you use like OOP? Is that the deal or what?
No, not the OOP, but I try to use the functional programming more and avoid the for loop.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm looking.
through array and you want to find something in JavaScript, supposed to use filter, right?
Mm,
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like it really depends on if you want to do like functional or like pure programming. By the way, in that course, I think it's in the chapter on state management or something like that, or no, not state management, but it was somewhere there. Data manipulation. Yes, there's chapter for data manipulation actually, and I think it's like when you go to that link, it's like the 9th lesson on data manipulation and some slides, and like it's for JavaScript, but like the concepts, like that you want to have, why you want to have pure functions, why you want to have immutable data structures, and use memoization. And for example, on the arrays, like there's a list like don't use these, use these, because
Yeah.
they the original.
Yeah.
And
Oh wow,
how you
I'm gonna take a look at this.
filtering, combining. Yeah, and same for the objects, how you work with the objects, and
Yeah.
also other things like map sets and stuff.
Oh wow,
And
that's gonna be very helpful.
I try to get used to it,
So like
but I still use for loop many times.
Well, I think I think most beginner programmers are in like that, for loop hell, where like everything they solve all of their problems with a for loop because they don't know how to iterate through the whole block otherwise.
yeah.
That's where I'm at because it's either a for loop or a while loop, and while loops actually are kind of hard, but yeah.
I
But
think it's easier to understand.
yeah,
I mean, when you read the code as a beginner, right?
yeah.
But if you are like get used to the functional programming and it's kind of cleaner.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take a look at those some of those methods, and I'm going to definitely try and scour the internet to get my hands on this. I just haven't been able. I haven't really had a whole lot of extra time, but I think I'm going to bite the bullet and get some of these other methods down a little bit better, because I think it would go a long ways to showing what putting some of my projects together.
Yep.
So, and I gotta go and relearn some of these data structures too, because I still, like, without a for loop I don't know how to iterate through a dictionary, and even then it's like, wait, how do I do that again?
Yeah, it takes practice. You like the first step is that you know that you can do things like that, and the second step is like to try to practice them either on your own projects or some like programming katas or something like that. That's a nice concept. Like those small problems that you just solved for fun, and then you try to solve it like different way each time or something like that. To just to get hang of it, and then it will come to you. Then when you come across array and you want to apply a function, you will suddenly think, yeah, I should probably use map, and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And maybe you think that if you know like one language like deeply between like no other languages, but like so broad, like the basic stuff. Which one would be better or the way to go?
Like for your first language or like
Yeah, for the start, for like
for the
the
start?
beginner, for the beginner.
I don't know. Like it really
Like
depends.
go with like if someone want to be a front end developer, like go with JavaScript like purely.
Yeah.
And don't look at Python yet. Like that.
Yeah, probably like that. It really depends, like on what you want to do. If you don't know what to do, there are two types of people. One will tell you like use Python because it has easy syntax and everything, and another will tell you start with C because you will learn about you know
That's
computers.
that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But yeah, I could see why someone would say that.
Yeah, because you will know about pointers and memory management and things like that.
The little C I know, I mean, I think even Dustin knows more C than I do, but I do know how to do things in C. Like I can patch things in and do shit like that. Like, because I mean, I set up my DWM build, so that was all patchwork. It was like, oh, you want to patch this, so they create a bunch of diffs and you put in all the code and you have to figure out how to do it. They have some pretty good tutorials though about it.
Yeah, so that's it. Like, and then when you say web development, you probably say JavaScript. When you say data science, you say Python. When you want to do like iOS apps, you will say Swift. And so on. Like when you want to do like game development, you can go with C# for Unity or C++ for Unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go. Like you can do whatever.
If you want to learn scripting, you can learn Perl.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
love Perl for scripting, but I know people like lose their minds when I say that. But it's like the best scripting language.
When you want to do array processing, you can learn APL. And
Yeah.
then you probably go to the madhouse right away.
But
I don't know if you ever saw like APL. but,
APL,
like,
yeah.
yeah, array processing language. Like that's the craziest shit ever. They actually program with just some like really specific symbols. And you actually can buy a special keyboard for just APL. These are the like symbols for APL programming. So yeah,
I remember this now. Yes, I actually.
So this is like a valid APL program or something.
Holy shit! Yes, I remember this. I actually heard. I don't remember who I heard about this from.
Hieroglyphics or something, right?
Yeah, they probably would put you in a mental institute.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Omar?
No, I said it looked like hieroglyphics or some ancient kind of symbols, similar,
Yeah.
It's like combination of
language or something.
like different math symbols and operations and stuff like that.
Yeah. I find it funny because I'll tell people like the best, like I like Bash for scripting languages, but like if I were to like really learn how to script, like I think Perl takes the cake because you can do like a million things like in one line of code, like, and you'll never know like what it did. It's like a list comprehension but on steroids. Like You can write one-liners like in Perl.
Welcome to. Yeah.
Welcome
I
to
actually-
what? I'm sorry.
No, that was me.
Oh.
You can check this out. This is a YouTuber that actually loves the APL.
Oh no way! I gotta
Yeah.
see this.
Would
And
more effective
he does nice videos like comparing different languages.
writing give you an edge at work?
Oh,
Grammarly
whoops,
can make
sorry.
your job one click
Yeah,
simpler.
shut up. I don't do Grammarly. I actually have an education. Thank you very much. Like, I don't know, man. Like all this stuff. Like, hey, you should learn. You should write things elegantly. Well, like, don't you have an imagination? Like, but anyway, there's this this guy on Twitch that I sometimes follow, and he used to script a lot in Perl, and then everybody got on the Python scripting bandwagon, and so did he. Then he realized, like, he went back and he goes, "Why am I scripting in Python? That makes no sense." Like, and he was showing some real, like, live examples. Like, I don't think Perl is good for anything except for scripting. Like, supposedly you can make websites out of it, but I wouldn't recommend it.
It was before PHP. You could make sites in Perl, for example. Fun stuff.
Yeah. I'll have to check that video out.
Yeah, it's fun.
Mm.
You can learn on different programming languages in existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, all right, Mimi, take care. We'll
Yeah.
see you on Saturday.
Yep. I should probably go as well.
Yeah.
It's midnight here. After
Yeah.
midnight, so
Mm.
I'm still in the office. So.
Oh no, that sucks.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
So what, do you come in at like 4 or 3 or 4 or 2? Or do you just have to go to the office once in a while?
Like I just go to the office when I want.
Oh, okay. That works.
Yeah, I just got like stuck in the office today because I was doing the development work and yeah.
Mm.
We actually had presentation today on like some company stuff, so I was here for that and for free food and then I did some work here and then yeah. Yeah.
Right on. So, just one last call out for any questions. Quick
I think
questions.
everybody's leaving slowly, so
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and
You're welcome, guys.
yeah,
Next
we really
time.
definitely appreciate your time and your insights and everything else.
Cool.
All right. Well, go
See
get
you.
some sleep.
Yeah, I will. See you.
See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye. All right. It looks like everybody except you and me left, right?
Basically, I gotta start working on that shoulder and thinking about the rest of dinner.
All right.
So. You got the recording done?
I got it. I'll go ahead and I'll slightly edit it, and then for time, and then I'll put it out later, probably today or tonight or tomorrow.